Design is investment. What I mean is that when you build something and it fits as many people as possible without the need to rebuild. And I don't want to use any terms. We've got two architects here with us today who will fill it in. I just look at it in three big buckets, that it has to be flexible. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I do some things by default already now. But when I broke my wrist 5 years ago, I didn't have to change anything in my house to be able to still use the faucets in my house. That's what I mean by flexible. Simple. As a European coming into US and using Airbnb, every time I go into a shower in a different place, it takes me a minute, and I'm not joking, to figure out how to use it. That's not how it's supposed to be. You have to come in and use it. It should be as simple as an apple, and I mean both apples this time. And finally, it has to be safe. You cannot trip on it. It has to be properly sized and spaced. I cannot put it better than people who were much smarter than I am. And sorry, that happens. And for context, just several numbers, just to think about it, especially if you're thinking of building a DU and renting it out afterwards. 15% of people have a dizziness problem. That means they need sometimes to support themselves. And I'm talking average adult US population. 19% of people have some sort of disability. 71% is overweight. That means different sizes, right? 5% of women pregnant, completely different set of requirements. 13% of population has issues with hearing, and 6% have issues with vision. And with this, let me stop sharing, and I'll introduce our guests today. And I'm happy to have here two companies that have already visited us before. One is called Modern Empathy, and the other is called Inspired ADUs. I know Carrie has one more company as well, but let's keep it to ADUs this time. And I think, Sarah, you have to be first, because I think we've divided the items, and I think it makes more sense if you guys go first.
Okay, so I will share my screen.
And would you mind introducing yourself as well? Because I'm terrible at this.
So I'm here with David Klein, is the CEO of Modern Empathy, and I'm the chief designer of the homes. I think it says that screen sharing is disabled.
Sorry, yeah, I told you I'm a terrible host. You have to keep talking. I'll make it possible in a second.
So, I mean, I think the way that you've set this up is really great. I mean, sometimes it's a question, you know, the question is, well, what does this have to do with me if I'm not disabled? And I think you've done a great job of explaining exactly that. I mean, it's about equity of all bodies and all people being able to use this space. It's about future-proofing for yourself for an injury or a pregnancy or an unexpected event in your own life, and also being equitable to guests. And I think that's part that's often overlooked. But even if you're not, you know, you don't have reach or dexterity or mobility issues, your friends do, or your parents do, or a future tenant of the home does. And so I think it's just an equitable way to build. And for small spaces, and I'm sure, you know, Carrie will say a similar thing, but for small spaces, it also just means that you can't make small, crummy, cramped spaces. So it's also just a nice design ethos in general for openness, flexibility, and adaptable living design. Okay, I'm going to try this again.
You should be fine now.
Oh yeah, got it. Okay. No, okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think David's gonna kick us off.
David?
Sure, I can do that. Hello, everybody. I'm David Klein, and thank you so much for having us here to talk about ADUs and how design, as we've been saying, is an investment into the future, and it's important to have spaces that will help our communities and families evolve, and to meet the needs of as many people and functions as possible without without breaking the bank. And really, that's our part of our mission. I founded the company Modern Empathy in 2017, and actually when I founded the company, it was with some pre-seed funding that was encouraging me to do some research in the area of aging in place, and specifically I was focused on social isolation. And over time, as I was involved in lots of discussions and meetings in the aging space, and forming an advisory team, I just kept hearing about how the root causes of social isolation, there are a few primary factors, but the number one factor here in the Bay Area had to do with housing, and the lack of flexibility and the cost of making housing modifications to support getting out of a situation as an older adult where you're living isolated in an apartment or in a large home in an unsafe environment, and not in an environment where you're interacting with other people on a daily basis. And so many families were grappling with how can we easily bring our family together, and evaluating the trade-offs with other options for housing their parents. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it's okay, we're older and we're in our home. How can we bring our children here who might be having trouble getting into the housing market? But there was just this perception in the space that it was so expensive and such a laborious process riddled with minefields. There was just, everybody was asking for innovations in this area, and I sort of had an aha moment that I felt like with ADUs, that was a great area where we can make progress and to really show the Bay Area and the world that we can make improvements that help our families grow, and help our neighborhoods evolve. And it's been an exciting journey so far. We take these projects from end to end, and we're continually working on improving a streamlined end-to-end process. Today we have 11 active projects totaling 18 new bedrooms for our area families, and we're looking forward to many more. Where we have, we came into these projects, Sarah can expand if she wants, but with sort of a prefab mentality, production housing mentality. How can we take the right amount of variability across projects and focus on a small number of units, and get the process right around those units, and as we continue to do projects, understanding how we can remove inefficiencies in the system, and continue to improve design to help our families, and really focusing on focusing on a few different elements in our designs. Primary among those are what's called universal design standards, or it's also called inclusive design. So we're creating livable spaces that feel great to be in. They kind of have a wow factor when you enter the space, and they're just very comfortable and light, and you know, everything in there is easy to reach, easy to operate. So really for all ages, and that we're putting thinking into these by building units that are inherently simpler to build, and especially once, you know, we're doing a number of units in neighborhoods that are very, very similar to each other. It enables the cost savings for everybody. And so affordability is a big initiative with us, but we don't want to value engineer. We don't want to get affordability by using cheap materials that are harder to use or don't age well over time, or maybe off-gassing, you know, because they're filled with glues or plastics. So really, it's about repeatability with quality, and thinking about constructability as well, and then really a big initiative with us as well is energy efficiency. The state has definitely helped everybody become more energy efficient with the new state energy standards. But we do make a conscious effort to use appliances and to design our lighting systems and our heating and cooling systems to be very energy efficient and to have minimal impact on the both the local environment in the yard, but also you know, on resource use in the community.
Yep, David, we are really looking forward to details.
So I'm going to get into details.
Thank you.
We were talking about this talk and this webinar, and you know, really thinking about wellness overall, which is something that we think about very holistically in the home. And I think your introduction also really spoke to a holistic approach to wellness. So we're going to focus on a couple of these, and Carrie's going to focus on others, but I just thought I'd list out in general how we think about this in terms of homes, in terms of ADUs in particular. So, you know, healthy, livable spaces, how it's situated in the yard, the materials we use, accessibility in all of the spaces. And so I thought I'd do a really quick overview just to kind of get us in the mindset of some of these other elements. And then I've got some real specifics in terms of kitchens and bathrooms. It keeps not wanting to go forward. Okay. So, you know, one of the advantages of an ADU is in general, they're in yards. And so there's a lot that we can do that have to do with indoor, outdoor living, fresh air, open space. And for us, this also is about privacy of two homes living on the same lot, which is also, you know, about comfort and wellness and openness, right? That openness doesn't mean everybody's living in the same space necessarily. So privacy is a concern as well. In terms of healthy materials, that's something we consider really strongly. As David said, you know, we're trying to do efficiency through standards and repeatability, but not through, you know, cheap materials, off-gassing materials, you know, yeah, making cuts in those places. Livability and comfort really has to do with the quality of the materials you're surrounded by, the quality of your air, And a lot of people have, you know, a lot of immunosensitivities to bad air quality, molds, off-gassing, VOCs, that these really trigger a lot of other longer health problems, and they're just not a good idea in general. So we've been really trying to make very high quality material choices. To this goes into floors, what's inside your walls, the paint on the walls, the cabinets and countertops. There are great choices for all of these that are natural and not off-gassing. And then it also has to do with circulation within the home of air, non-ducted heating and cooling units, because ducts cause a lot of air quality issues potentially over time, and then circulation and airflow through the homes. We're very lucky to live in a place that that we can open the windows most of the year. Energy efficiency, as David said, is also one of our big tenets. And so the quality of the exterior envelope, meaning the insulation and quality of the non-leaky building envelopes are really important. Also, solar integration. So exterior envelopes will lower your overall need for energy. Efficient appliances and efficient water appliances and fixtures will lower your need for water. And then to have an all electrical energy option means that you can offset your load requirements with clean energy. So that's kind of how we're thinking about energy efficiency in terms of comfort and wellness. But what I'm gonna now do a little dive into is kitchens and bathrooms. So our motivation for ADA and aging in place is really about inclusion and comfort and making the homes livable and comfortable for all bodies and all abilities. And so overall, this means curbless entries between rooms, wide doorways, enough space for turning around and moving around furniture. So no small rooms, even when it doesn't have to do with kitchens and bathrooms, so that there's room for moving, you know, even if you just at some point need a cane or a crutch or a walker, those have a lot of pivoting and turning needs as well. So for our kitchens, I'm going to just go through like a behind the curtains. Here's how we think about how we've designed our kitchen standards. One of the big issues with aging in place, and you know, you had talked about your wrist injury, is lifting heavy things. So this is like blenders and coffee makers, as well as pans out of the oven. And the kind of lift and turn is a real issue with aging in place in particular. So we have wall ovens mounted at counter height, so it's just a pivot, and we always have a recessed area on our countertops for blenders, coffee makers, that kind of thing, so they can just be pulled out. So it's really, the pivot is a real risk-prone movement that we've tried to eliminate in the kitchens. Easy grip cabinet pulls and the same on appliances are really important. It's easy to see when you're buying appliances if they are ADA compliant, and one of those elements is the types of pulls, not needing really fine motor dexterity, but also a lot of pulls need strength in fingers, which you don't think about, but that's a really, I mean, it's easy enough to design that away. Drawers and pullouts for easy reach for base cabinets. Again, this is that kind of lift and pivot motion. You know, anything that's a cabinet, you can get inserts that pull out, and drawers also allow for easier access. You're not stooping and looking in anything. ADA compliant appliances, which, you know, other than the pulls, also has to do with clear screens, easy to turn knobs on ovens if there's knobs, and having all of the control bars up in front near you instead of reaching and not being able to see what's going on. Roll-in options for sinks and cooktops. This year we were able to change our cabinet distributor to one that builds in the ability for later on sink and cooktop cabinets to be retrofitted for roll-in options. And that's pretty exciting because not all cabinets have that. So that's something to look at again to be like really future-proof in terms of your kitchen cabinets. And then also just open space in general, flexibility in general. So we don't build in islands, but we build in space for one. So it could be a table, but it could also, you know, take different configurations and forms based on the size of the space. Flexibility, especially in small spaces, really is key because however you're planning to use it this year may not be how you want to use it in 5 years. And so building in flexibility is really a big part of this. Turning radiuses and turning around corners just takes more room than you think it does. And so to be universally designed, that's something to think about too, not just those straightaways, but the turns. And then bathrooms similarly are an area to really to be specific about that have a lot of potential pitfalls. So for us, the main item that usually comes to mind when you think of ADA compliance in a bathroom is a turnaround zone of 5 feet. And so we've designed even our smallest bathroom, which is smaller than the one you're looking at, to have a 5-foot turning radius with no curbs. Grab bar blocking in walls. You may not need grab bars now, but if you want them later and the blocking's not in the walls, you're taking out the wall or you're taking out the tile. And so it's one of those things that is easy to put in if you're thinking about it, right? And so, so we've been putting that into the walls of the units where the grab bars would go for potential future grab bars. Curb-free showers and doorways. This is something that we are putting we've put a lot of work into, is how to integrate actually completely curbless bathrooms in a way that they're really roll-in bathrooms, that roll-in showers. We have some current clients who are also integrating flip-down benches into their showers. That even if you don't need a wheelchair or a walker, just the ability to sit is in the spirit of the list of these are things that I notice when I'm in spaces. There are a lot of places where it's hard to sit. And so that's something that we're starting to integrate in now that we're hearing it from clients. Easy clean floors and materials. We've even done our toilet and vanity don't touch the floor so that you can actually just clean the entire floor seamlessly without any obstructions. So ways of easily cleaning that are not cumbersome. Light and ventilation in wet areas is really important. And again, so is privacy. So we put in a tall awning window that gives a lot of view, but only from shoulders up. And so it's a combination of privacy and ventilation. And then as was mentioned before, easy to use handles. So again, that the push buttons on toilets and the low flow, high flow, dual flush toilets, some of those buttons require a lot of individual finger strength or a lot of dexterity and micro movement. And so we're being very considerate about which fixtures we spec to eliminate those types of needs, like full palm press or full hand pivot on faucets. And again, like these are really beautiful faucets. There's a lot of options out there. It's just a matter of thinking about it when you're at this stage, right?
Sarah,
that's it.
Can you go back one slide? And just one question. And I think we have to moving over to Carrie, but before we move on, when you say curbless shower, could you please explain to people who have not had experience with it how
that works?
Yep. Where does the water go?
Where does it go? It just stays. No, basically, normally what you do in a shower is you have a pan, and the pan slopes to one side and drains, right? Or it slopes to a hole and drains. And if the floor is all at one level, then you put a curb in so that you can have that pan isolated from the rest of the bathroom. For a curbless shower, what we're doing is sinking that part of the floor enough for drainage so that the floor goes and then drains down. So we're still putting in a shower pan, we're still doing all the same things, but it's down below the floor level of the rest of the bathroom. And that way it really is a seamless, you over to the slope and then down the slope. And so, so there's no discernible curb. There's nothing you have to step over or trip over.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Carrie, over to you.
Oh, stop sharing.
And I think I later on I can show the picture of a bathroom with the curbless shower where you can see how it works. I actually pulled it up. Yeah, Carrie, inspire us away. Carrie, are you on mute? Yep, you are on mute.
Okay, unmute now. There we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that. Great, well, I'm Carrie Shores-Diller with Inspired ADUs. We have an architecture firm, Larson Shores, that we started in 2003. So we started our division on ADUs in 2008. Currently, we're working on 42 ADU projects around the Bay Area. But let's go ahead and just dive into universal design. So making buildings, especially ADUs, accessible is something that Modern Empathy and our firm really share a passion for. There is no legal requirement to make residential units accessible. So taking on these principles, whether you think about them as the American Disabilities Act or universal design, are kind of something as designers that we're inviting you to take on. We'll talk about universal design, but I think sometimes it's hard to understand. And the best example I've ever had is that company OXO from the kitchen equipment. Basically, he saw his wife, the CEO saw his wife, Betsy, using this old school vegetable peeler, and she had bad arthritis in her hand. And he saw how difficult it was without that dexterity and with the pain to do it. And so this is the evolution of his product to create that peeler for his wife. But what it does is, as we've all used those products, they're just friendlier to use. They're easy for kids with small hands. They're easy for people with pain or dexterity. And that gets into the kind of root of universal design. There's 7 principles in universal design: equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effort, and size and space for use. I feel like there's a lot of overlap between these 7 categories. And so what I wanted to do is walk you through a case study of one of our ADUs. This one is 274 square feet. I think it was a 1-car garage that we added onto and converted. But the space was for a client who is aging, and she has mobility issues in that she can't reach her shoulder very far up above, horizontal to the ground. She has very little reach zone. Also, her partner, her long-term partner, is in a wheelchair. So she really wanted to make sure that, to Olesia's point earlier, that visibility, making sure that people can come in and visit. So you can see this is a very tiny ADU, but the function is around the perimeter of the space. That's making sure that you can approach and access and get to all the various elements of the ADU. I think in general, ADUs are really made for universal design because we have to be clever and really think about the best way to use our space and how to maximize it. Sometimes maximizing that space means going up, and it's not always great for reaching. On this wall here, we've got a built-in credenza for the storage of the clothes. We wanted to get her drawers below, but we wanted to capture this high space up above. Also, a desk that could be flexible. This chair could be moved and her partner could roll under that desk without any change. And universal design isn't about gadgets, but there are a lot of cool features that help people. So she, again, couldn't reach up to the hanger on that rod there, so we installed this pull-down mechanism. This is a product, Hefela makes a lot of great products, and my model in this scene is a little taller than my client, but you can grab even the very bottom of this, pull it down, it locks into space, you can kind of select what you need and then push it back up. I know that Sarah talked a little bit about kitchens, but it also is a great way. We're kind of trying to talk about furniture and built-ins, and then we're going to talk about lighting too, but there are a lot of elements with kitchens. Again, having that roll-in space, but kind of putting things farther below since she had a reach issue. For upper cabinets, you know, there's always that upper cabinet when you're designing a kitchen that you're only going to put that random vase that you need every once in a while. But we still need to take advantage of all these storage and smaller ADUs. So again, these tools, these pull down shelf pieces help get that reach zone to something that can be used by a greater number of people. And with universal design, that's also grandchildren, small people, you know, it goes for people with disabilities or just different physical size and shapes. The countertops in this unit we lowered because she was of shorter stature. But then we also incorporated these pull-out breadboards. For ADUs, these are a great feature because they give us extra counter space, but they also give us different heights to work at. So if you have different people, like my husband is a lot taller than me and our counters are really tall. So ergonomically, I find myself with my shoulders up above my ears when I'm chopping in the kitchen. So having some designs like these really help to figure out how to have different levels. So we've also used this in another unit in the laundry room, trying to keep the laundry space really nice and compact. We wanted an area for folding. So we have the counter up above that can be used to kind of hold the basket or the detergent or what have you, but then you can pull out this section. It's a bit more, it's lower, so it's easier to engage with and more reachable. And when we're thinking about the built-in furniture, one thing we love to do is we love built-in benches. The built-in bench, when you think about a chair, you need the chair, and then you usually need about 3 feet behind it for access. And if you take that equation of a 3-foot table, 3-foot circulation, 3-foot circulation in a small ADU, that can take up a lot of space. This is obviously a different ADU, which is a little bit bigger, but we still like to use the bench, tuck the table to one side. That way you have a nice access corridor. For these chairs, we often will put storage on both sides of the peninsula in an ADU. So again, that's a bunch of storage that can be reached by the grandchildren that are visiting. You can open that up and get to things without climbing up on a ladder to get to a higher point. The bench also gives us an opportunity for storage. Now, granted, the storage that's back in the corners are things you're going to want to just get occasionally, but we love to design this kind of end bench area, and we always have a drawer that slides out. So this can be a home office area, this could be a file cabinet. We often will put outlets in that drawer, so if you have a laptop and you're working here at the table, you can put it away and charge it, and you can imagine the ergonomics of just being able to reach down, access what you need there, and then shut things away is really how we think about how the body is engaging with the space and for the most flexibility and ease of use. So a lot of it is thinking about like equitable use, who could do this? This is in a smaller unit, we had the TV actually installed down in a cabinet and it lifts up, but it's with a remote control. So it's not a complicated thing that you have to move over all the time. But these are some ideas for kind of furniture and built-ins in terms of how we capture universal design ideas. Switching over to lighting design, there's a bunch of different elements to think about. There's day lighting, general lighting, task lighting, ambient light, night lights, and the idea of reducing glare. So this is an ADU that's photographed right now with all natural light. Part of orienting your ADU in the backyard is trying to figure out the ideal sun position. Now with small backyards, you don't always have the ability to do that, but if you can, the northern light is really the most elegant, soft, beautiful, consistent light. Southern light is very harsh, lots of heat, and obviously east and west kind of are only in the morning or in the night. So trying to orient, this cottage had beautiful northern light from a bunch of bifold doors, and then also using skylights where we can to kind of capture that additional space, or sorry, quality of light. Obviously lights aren't going to help us at night, so we want to go through the other elements of lighting. It's a little hard to see here, but there's under counter lights over the kitchen cabinets, and in the hood has lights as well. We want to make sure that the task lights, those are the lights responsible for lighting the surface that you're using, have the right strength and quality of light. You don't want to put these lights that are up above, if you were standing here chopping, are going to cast a shadow behind you, and they're not going to illuminate what's going on your counter. So for task lights in this cottage, we've got the under cabinet, we've got 2 pendant lights over the peninsula, and a chandelier over the dining room table. We also have general lights in the ceiling, can lights that can be adjusted and dimmed. You know, natural light is the best quality light you can get, but the new LED lighting sources are really close match to daylighting. And with the dimmers, you can really control it so you don't have big glares on your countertops. The glare can be really difficult on our eyes. And then adding an extra little flare is something, a little ambient light. So how do we put a nice quality of glow to the space to make it feel accessible and in just a really nice quality of space? One of the other things to think about is switches and outlets. As we do get older or age in place, leaning all the way down to get to an outlet is sometimes difficult. So in this particular unit, we have a plug here so that there can be a charging station nearby. Thinking about the level of where we install all those different features and kind of questioning whether it's the right position for your client or for you. Okay, there we go. This is not an ADU, just one of our architecture projects, but it was my best example of our night lights. We have these under cabinet lights on occupancy sensors. So when you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and walk into the room, this lower light will click on. It's also helping to illuminate any potential trip hazards, if there was something left on the floor or something out. Great way to kind of modernize and make night lights a little more sophisticated and helpful. Again, we've got task lighting coming off the vanity so that you're getting that light forward, and then ambient supportive light in the ceiling. But again, the best way is trying to figure out how we can capture natural light. So you can see how much light this skylight is bringing into this bathroom. This isn't turned on, but in this bathroom, we've put the lighting in the mirror so that it's really coming straight at you, so you're not getting any unnecessary shadows on you. And then reinforcing all of that with a more ambient light strip that's in a hidden cove that goes behind the shower and the tub. But you can really get fun when universal design is about taking things to kind of thinking through the cleverness, but then in a hope to get to a really simplistic, really user-friendly element. So for example, you can see this handrail has a light built into it, again on an occupancy sensor. So when you approach the stair, the light comes on, that's going to illuminate where you're stepping. But it also has a nice ambient quality too that makes it feel you know, like it's a special space and it's been thought through, but it's a very intuitive, user-friendly design. So I just wanted to walk you through those kind of different elements. This is a summary of those points, and we'll thank you and turn it back over to Olesia.
Yeah, and I just want actually to show one more slide, which brings numbers into the so there was some study done in Europe to evaluate the financial benefits of sustainability, and it turns out that they bring an overall 23% reduction in overall costs, which is a huge number if you think about it long term. And another number, why doesn't do it to us today? Another number that I think of is like when you think about solar and you're thinking about resale value, most of projects in Bay Area are about 15,000 plus or minus. And then there was a study done that the homes with the solar system can be sold for an average sales price premium of 17,000. So not only you get a tax break, at least if you do it the next 2 years, not only you don't pay PG&E, you don't suffer from PG&E price increases, but you also get your money back, literally. And if that doesn't make people switch to solar, I don't know what. The only catch is, of course, that if your bill is bigger than 150, if it's smaller, then it doesn't make financial sense, and you know, I would not advise it. But if you haven't done it yet, I've got actually, first of all, our solar seminar that we had a couple of weeks ago is up on the website, and we have a nice offer from our solar partner as well. So if somebody wants to check it out, you're welcome. And now it's actually time for questions. And I know that I've had a question, and I think we might have a minute for it. Just to balance, because the modern empathy was talking about VOC-free, etc. materials. Carrie, could you tell us if you guys use similar or different approach to how you select materials? Like,
yeah, I think we are very in line with modern empathy. I think we share a lot of values. I mean, kind of passive design, doing as much as we can with ventilation, natural lighting, is something that's pretty important to us, but then we definitely dial it into the energy efficient shell, the indoor air quality. You know, as our bodies age, our ability to handle indoor air quality or toxins in the air diminishes rapidly. So something that might not bother us would bother an aging parent like tremendously. So the low VOC and the very healthy indoor air qualities are super important to us.
Yeah, and I promised to share a photo. Well, I don't see any questions. Wait, guys, you can actually unmute yourself as well and ask a question if you have one. But let me show you that bathroom that has given me nightmares a couple of years ago. Here you can see the, Sarah, can you help me? I've forgotten the word.
The linear drain?
Linear drain,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you very much. That's the linear drain that takes the water in, and it's sloped. Something that we have not mentioned, but we should really when we talk about it, that it has to be non-slippery, right? And the other thing that I've covered well in my article on Medium is that people were actually trying to do ADA in their homes, and then they were not happy with the results, and I couldn't get it until I actually took, you know, like 6 months course on it. And it turned out that people were using the general principles and the general numbers without trying to match it to their own, you know, like weight, height, etc. And exactly what Carrie was talking about. Like for somebody who is 5 feet, it's one level of the countertops. For somebody who is 7 feet, it's a different level. Same for grab bars, same for where the faucet should be, and we could continue. So that's something, definitely one takeaway from today is that if it's your home, it should be personal. It cannot be designed for everyone completely. So you have to think about that.
And, you know, I think that's a really good distinction between universal design and ADA. If ADA were to come in, ADA is the American Disabilities Act is trying to speak to the common denominator. And the beauty that we have with our own personal homes is that we can actually design for our bodies, our families, our dimensions. And so that's why being liberated from not having to follow the ADA really helps us use it a little better as designers.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception that that ADA especially, but also universal design is medical. And I think that that's like a really big distinction to make. This is about day-to-day lifestyle and hopefully avoiding larger medical problems with having non-slip floors and you know, no trip hazards and having things more built for our bodies rather than, you know, one size fits all kinds of standards.
Carrie, I think there is a question for you in the chat, maybe because it's a long one, so I'd rather you just read it yourself, and then when you're ready, you can.
Well, I think the question is whether we have converted a garage into a second home, and yes, we've done that quite a bit. The one I started with, the kind of bright coral ADU, was a one-car garage. We did a little bit of an addition because the one-car garage was pretty small, and made that into the ADU. We've done a handful of two-car garage conversions. A two-car garage really makes for a lovely one-bedroom, one-bath kind of open living room space. And what we're a little different from Modern Empathy in that they're doing more modular builds. We're doing architectural drawings and pre-designed drawings. So if we have a cottage that worked well for you, you can work with us to get a permit through those plans. And we do have a two-car garage on our site. It's called the Commonwealth.
The question to this about the sunken shower pan in a slab. That's a painful one.
No, so we've been doing that. We have a detail for the insert. And I mean, slabs are great if you have the height on your lot for universal access. It eliminates a lot of complications about and cost of what you have to do on the exterior of the building. And what we do is we do have a detail for sinking in the whole shower for the linear drain. That's no problem as long as there's height, which every lot is different.
And can you guys update us on what's the status with you both and the pre-approved plan for San Jose? Because that's it. Yeah,
so we're in process. We have a couple projects currently in San Jose, and we're using those projects to then to get our units approved for the client project, and then on the pre-approved plans. So we're in the process of doing that.
Yeah, we have the same story.
Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, even with the most, let me put it that way. I think a lot of it now depends on jurisdictions, on cities, and even those companies that can actually print out design pretty quickly, even they now say 5 to 8 months, because they cannot guarantee that it will be out of the permit procedure by then.
I mean, since you focus on permits, you could speak to this as well or better than we can, but I think it is a really important point that when you see the kind of, you know, off the shelf or out of the box or whatever you want to call it, prefab units, there are a lot of complexities that have to do with the local jurisdiction level. These are all state laws, but they're implemented on local levels. And so there's a lot of intentionality, I know, in Carrie's designs and in ours too, that have to do with those individual relationships and knowledge of local jurisdictions.
Yeah, we will not get away today without doing something about costs. I'll take the first hit. So I'll tell straight away, you cannot compare the cost of the main house, of the square foot for the main house, to the cost of the square foot for the ADU, because of one simple reason. It's a smaller footprint, and you divide this almost the same amount of costs over the smaller number of square feet. So they always come out higher. I personally haven't seen anything cheaper than, I think 280 was the cheapest I saw, like the cheapest square foot price. Usually they're much more expensive. And not because of the building itself, but because of permit, utilities. Help me ladies there.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, that I would think about this are all of the expensive parts of a home are the utilities and foundation work, the kitchen, the bathroom, the exterior envelope. An ADU is pretty much all that and nothing else. So the cheap part of a main home that you get is all the empty space, you know, a larger living room, larger bedrooms, all of that empty space is kind of a freebie, and you know, you're paying a lot less for it. So for an ADU, most of your space is expensive space. And the energy code for California is really all about, in a lot of ways, that exterior envelope. And so since most of your wall is that exterior envelope in an ADU, that also adds a lot of cost and also a lot of requirements to the efficiency of the exterior.
I think, but on the plus side, the fun thing is that if you want to do a really fancy kitchen backsplash tile, you can do it because there's only about 11 square feet of kitchen backsplash tile. So it's kind of, you have to really flip your thinking. Whereas if you're going to do a big kitchen remodel or big home addition, all the kind of things that you learned, like don't spend a lot of money on counters or don't spend a lot of money on tiles, so that's all thrown out the window for ADUs. You're spending money on foundation, so live it up and add some flair with your tile.
I mean, that's a much more positive spin on this. And I think that's definitely how we approach the interior options too, because, you know, the difference in a little bit of cost, you might as well just get a much nicer, more long-term, more durable option, because you're really not saving that much money. It, like in the other way, there's no reason to cheap out on finishes because you're not saving that much money. So no, it is, and they are really fun. Like it is wonderful to design very livable small spaces. And you know, I think it's, in general, we're getting more of an appreciation of small spaces and small, very usable spaces. And one of the things that I really enjoy designing in ADUs are things like storage integration and ways of thinking about the actual life in each of the rooms. In a way that kind of gets lost in a big home because you've just got space, and you know, you don't really need to be specific and consider all of the spaces in that way.
Leslie, would you like me to talk about specific costs at all?
Yeah, I guess you can mention. I think it's always good not to mention in general, but like I had a project in City X that cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can do that. Yeah.
Can I share my screen?
If you ask nicely, I guess, yes.
Please, pretty please.
You're welcome.
So this is what we're seeing across our projects. All of these are active projects or completed. Now, these prices down here are the end-to-end project, although yeah, I do outline certain things that are not covered. And there is a little bit of variation from property to property. For us, it's primarily having to do with impact fees, and then any particulars about the excavation and drainage and utilities connections. So the site work that needs, you know, the specific site work that needs to be done on the property. Because all of our units are very similar, we have a pretty good amount of specificity. Like we can predict very well what that part will cost. So these, you know, we can stand behind these numbers in most situations if you're on an average flat lot and not in a flood zone or not in a high-risk seismic area or on a sloped lot. So you can see that on the low end, you know, we're seeing total project costs around 150, just over $150,000. On the high end, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, 1,000 square foot, you know, it's just coming in under $300,000, and that is including everything needed, you know, from beginning to end. In most projects, except for furniture and landscaping, aside from an entry pathway and cleanup. Different things do impact costs, as I mentioned. Yeah, flood zone, fire zone, earthquake zone, slope lot, particularly deep lots or large lots, you know, having to do with utilities connection details. If your property is on a septic system, those things could make costs higher. Other things that are more common have to do with demolition. You know, so a lot of projects do require some amount of demolition if you're removing a pool or a shed or even a garage, detached garage. A lot of times we have to upgrade the main electrical panel of the main house to support the additional electrical load. And a significant proportion of projects need sewer pumps associated with the ADUs because, you know, if you're connecting to the sewer system, most cities require that you connect into the sewer lateral in front of the main house, which means you have to go all the way from the back of the backyard all the way to the front, which is a long run for the sewer. And often on a flat lot, you just don't have enough slope to counteract that long run, and you might need a pump. But there's ways of mitigating that by increasing the height of the foundation. But there's, I mean, we could go on and on about the details.
Yeah, we can, go back in time.
There that matter, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you, David. I think we have kind of run out of time. We promised people that it will just about 1 hour. You guys have all the contact information in the chat. I hope you, especially those of you who have been with me for several times, you know that there is a reason to my madness. There is a reason why I'm starting talking about planning a project with talking about solar and then talking about landscape and now talking about design. So I want you to think all these things through before you jump into a project. And if we are helpful, we are very happy. Thank you very much. I'm thinking of having the next event July 23rd. It will be mostly about the quality in construction. The guest speaker will be announced separately, but if I have your email, you will hear about it from me if you're interested. Thank you again. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, David. Thank you, Carrie. Always a pleasure to see you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.